Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into some seriously weird life? We're talking extremophiles today. You know, those organisms that just love the places that would make most other life go, nope, not a chance.
It's crazy, right? They really make you rethink where life can actually hang out and thrive.
Mm.
I mean, we're talking about some serious extremes here, like scalding hot springs, freezing glaciers, super salty lakes.
Yeah, and don't forget about the intense pressure in the deep sea. Or how about areas just blasted with radiation? I mean, how can anything live in those places?
Right. It's wild. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today, unpacking all this research and articles about extremophiles. By the time we're done, you'll have a whole new perspective on just how tough life can be.
Okay, so first things first. What exactly are we talking about when we say extremophiles?
So basically, an extremophile is any organism that thrives in conditions that would be, well, extreme for most other forms of life. These places would straight up kill most organisms, but for extremophiles, it's like their ideal vacation spot.
So it's not just about barely surviving, right? They're actually happy campers in these crazy environments.
Exactly. They've evolved these unique adaptations to not only tolerate these harsh conditions, but to actually thrive in them. It's pretty mind-blowing.
You know, I remember learning about extremophiles back in school, but it was always kind of a side note like, oh, and by the way, there are these weird things living in crazy places. But it sounds like there's way more to the story.
Oh, absolutely. The study of extremophiles has really exploded in the past few decades, and it's really changing how we think about the limits of life, period. One great example is Thermus aquaticus, a heat-loving bacteria discovered in Yellowstone National Park.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one. Isn't that where we get Taq polymerase from? That enzyme that's super important for PCR.
You got it. And that's just one example of how extremophiles, even though they live in these seemingly isolated environments, can have a huge impact on science and technology.
Wow, I never really thought about it that way. So these extremophiles, are they giving us clues about how life even began?
That's a great question. Some scientists think that life on Earth might have actually started in extreme environments, maybe around hydrothermal vents, those underwater openings that spew out superheated, mineral-rich water.
Hold on. So instead of that warm little primordial soup we always hear about, are you saying life might have started in a boiling chemical-packed cauldron?
It's definitely a theory with some weight behind it, and it makes you wonder, if life can pop up and thrive in those kinds of harsh conditions here, what about other places in the universe? I mean, are there extremophiles just chilling on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, under all that ice? Or maybe erupting from the geysers on Enceladus, that moon of Saturn?
Right. We're always looking for Earth-like planets, but what if we should be looking for extremophile-like planets too?
Exactly. Knowing about extremophiles really opens up the possibilities for where we might find life out there. But hey, before we book our tickets for an intergalactic extremophile safari, let's figure out the different kinds we have right here on Earth.
Okay, so give me the rundown. What kind of extremophiles are we talking about here?
Well, there are a whole bunch of different types, each adapted to its own special brand of extreme environment. We've got the thermophiles, like our friend Thermus aquaticus, the heat lovers who thrive in hot springs and those hydrothermal vents. Then on the opposite end of the thermometer, you've got the psychrophiles. They love the cold. Think glaciers, polar seas, even permafrost.
Okay, so we've got the hotheads and the cool kids. What else? Are there any that can handle, like, crazy saltiness?
You bet. Those are the halophiles, and they love environments saltier than, well, anything you can imagine. Think salt flats and saline lakes. Those are their stomping grounds.
So temperature and saltiness. Anything else?
Don't forget about the acid lovers. The acetophiles thrive in environments that are as acidic as, well, battery acid.
Wow.
And on the other side of that pH spectrum, we've got the alkalophiles, who love highly alkaline conditions like you find in some soda lakes.
Wow, this is already more extreme than I thought. So we've got temperature, salinity, and pH covered. What about pressure? Like those crazy deep-sea creatures that look like they're straight out of a sci-fi movie.
You're thinking about barophiles. They're built to withstand the crushing pressure you find in the deepest parts of the ocean, like the Mariana Trench.
Unbelievable. So is there anything that can handle radiation? I mean, that sounds like something out of a comic book.
Believe it or not, there is. They're called radiophiles, and they've actually evolved ways to repair their DNA and survive doses of radiation that would kill most other life. It's pretty incredible.
So we've got the thermophiles, psychrophiles, halophiles, acetophiles, alkalophiles, barophiles, and radiophiles. That's a whole lot of extreme living. It's just wild to think about all these organisms thriving in these places that seem completely impossible to us.
It really is amazing. And each type has developed its own special set of adaptations to not only survive, but to thrive in its specific extreme environment. And that's exactly what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
I can't wait to hear more about these adaptations. It's already clear that extremophiles are way more than just some weird biological sideshow. They're changing how we think about life itself.
Totally. They're a testament to how resilient and adaptable life really is. And they offer a glimpse into the possibility of life existing on other planets. But before we blast off to other worlds, let's get into the nitty-gritty of extremophiles right here on Earth.
I'm ready. I mean, it's one thing to say they can handle these insane conditions, but
Yeah.
how do they actually do it? What sort of tricks do they have up their sleeves to not just survive, but to actually thrive?
Let's start with the heat lovers, the thermophiles. Picture this. You're hanging out in a hot spring where the water's basically boiling. Most organisms would, well, cook. Their proteins would fall apart, their DNA would be toast. But not the thermophiles. They've evolved these special proteins and enzymes that can handle the heat.
So their internal machinery is basically built for a sauna then. But what makes their proteins so different?
It all comes down to their structure and the kinds of bonds that hold them together. Thermophile proteins, they've got these stronger bonds, and they're often more compact. This makes them way less likely to unravel in the heat. It's like, imagine a flimsy silk scarf wilting in the sun versus a tough canvas tent that can handle anything.
Gotcha. Makes sense. But it's not just the heat they have to worry about, right? What about those hydrothermal vents? Those things are spewing out superheated, mineral-rich water. It's like a pressure cooker down there.
You're telling me. And some thermophiles, particularly those hanging out near hydrothermal vents, have adapted to deal with both extreme heat and pressure. Their cell membranes, which act like a barrier between the cell and the outside world, they have these special lipids that help them stay stable and functional under those intense conditions.
So they've got extra reinforcement to deal with all that pressure. What about those minerals spewing out of the vents? Do these organisms get their energy from that stuff?
You're on the right track. In these deep sea environments, no sunlight, right? So these thermophiles, they've evolved to get their energy from chemicals instead. It's called chemosynthesis. They use the energy from those chemical reactions, often involving sulfur, to power their whole metabolism.
That is so cool. It completely changes how we think about where life can exist. Instead of sunlight and photosynthesis, they're thriving in total darkness, running on chemicals. Mind-blowing.
It really shows you how adaptable life can be. And it opens up all sorts of possibilities for life existing in other places beyond Earth.
This is amazing.
Okay.
Okay, we've covered the hotheads, the thermophiles. Let's flip the script and talk about the cold-loving extremophiles, those psychrophiles. How do they survive in temperatures that would freeze most of us solid?
Well, psychrophiles have their own set of tricks. They produce these spiral enzymes that work best at low temperatures. These enzymes are more flexible than those found in organisms that like it warmer, allowing them to keep those metabolic processes going, even when it's freezing.
So it's like their cellular machinery is designed to run smoothly, even in slow motion.
Exactly. It's like having a car engine that can run efficiently in the Arctic. Plus, to keep their cells from turning into ice cubes, they produce antifreeze proteins. These proteins latch onto ice crystals as they form, stopping them from getting too big and damaging the cell.
Wow, it's like having tiny little ice scrapers inside their cells. So these adaptations let psychrophiles thrive in glaciers, polar seas, permafrost places that would turn most of us into popsicles.
That's right. Now, let's shift gears again and talk about another extreme environment: high salinity. The halophiles, the salt lovers, have evolved to live in places saltier than, well, anything you can imagine.
But I know if I spend too much time in salt water, I'd shrivel up like a raisin. How do they manage?
They've developed ways to maintain what we call osmotic balance. This makes sure their cells don't lose too much water to their salty surroundings. One way they do this is by accumulating high concentrations of certain compounds inside their cells, things like potassium ions. This helps them keep a good balance of water and salt inside and outside the cell.
So they've created their own internal salt mines to counteract the external saltiness.
That's a great way to put it. And just like the thermophiles have heat-adapted proteins, halophiles have proteins specifically designed to work in high salt concentrations.
It's amazing how life always finds a way. We've got thermophiles taking on the heat, psychrophiles chilling in the cold, and halophiles soaking up the salt. What's next on our extremophile adventure?
Well, we've tackled temperature and salinity. Now let's explore the world of pH extremes. That's where we'll meet the acidophiles and alkalophiles.
Let's get our pH levels balanced then. I'm ready to dive in. Let's start with those acidophiles. How do they survive in environments as acidic as, you said it before, battery acid?
Acidophiles, they're pretty clever. They've got ways to keep the pH inside their cells fairly neutral, even when they're surrounded by crazy acidity. They do this by using special pumps in their cell membranes that actively remove extra protons or hydrogen ions. This keeps their internal environment from becoming too acidic.
It's like they've built tiny little dams to hold back a flood of acid.
Perfect analogy. And like the other extremophiles we've talked about, their proteins and enzymes are also designed to function in these highly acidic environments.
Gotcha. Now, on the other side, we've got the alkalophiles, the ones that love high pH. How do they handle conditions that are as alkaline as, well, drain cleaner?
Alkalophiles face a different kind of challenge. Keeping enough protons inside their cells, they've evolved special adaptations in their cell membranes that prevent those protons from leaking out, making sure their internal environment stays slightly acidic even when it's super alkaline outside.
Sounds like they're running an exclusive proton club inside their cells. Acidophiles building dams against acidity, and alkalophiles running exclusive proton clubs. It seems like everywhere we look in the world of extremophiles, we find more incredible adaptations.
And we're not done yet. We still have to explore those fascinating adaptations of the barophiles and radiophiles.
You mean the pressure lovers and the radiation survivors?
I'm all ears.
Okay, so let's get to those last two extremophile groups, the pressure lovers and the radiation survivors. Let's start with the barophiles, those deep-sea champs that thrive under, well, a whole lot of pressure. I can't even imagine what it'd be like down there.
It's hard to wrap your head around the kind of pressure they deal with, right? Like, picture the weight of the entire ocean pushing down on you. But barophiles, they're built for it. They have these unique adaptations. Take their cell membranes, for instance. They're much more fluid, which lets them handle the pressure without getting crushed.
So it's like their cells are these tiny, flexible submarines built to withstand the deep-sea pressure.
Exactly. And their enzymes, those proteins that make all the chemical reactions in their cells happen, well, they've also evolved to work perfectly under high pressure. Otherwise, all those metabolic processes would just grind to a halt.
Life finds a way, huh? Even in the deepest, darkest corners of the ocean.
Uh,
Okay, so pressure lovers, check. Now let's move on to the radiation survivors, those radiophiles. How do they manage to live in places with radiation levels that would be deadly to most other life forms?
Radiophiles, they're truly amazing. They've evolved these super efficient DNA repair mechanisms. See, radiation can really mess up DNA, causing mutations and even cell death. But radiophiles, they've developed these ways to quickly and accurately fix that damage, letting them survive in environments that would fry most organisms.
It's like they have a whole crew of microscopic mechanics on call 247, patching up their DNA and keeping those cells running smoothly, even under constant bombardment.
I love that analogy. And some radiophiles, they even have multiple copies of their genome, kind of like a backup system in case one copy gets too damaged to repair.
Like a spare tire for your DNA. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the heat lovers, the cold lovers, the salt lovers, the acid lovers, alkali lovers, the pressure lovers, and the radiation survivors. It's incredible how resilient and adaptable life can be. But are there any extremophiles that can handle more than one extreme at a time?
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of extremophiles are what we call polyextremophiles. It means they can tolerate several different extremes simultaneously.
Whoa, so there are organisms that can handle, say, extreme heat, N&D, high salinity, and intense pressure all at once.
You got it. One really impressive example is Deinococcus radiodurans. It's sometimes called Conan the bacterium, and for good reason. This thing can withstand extreme radiation, cold, dehydration, vacuum conditions, and even acid. It's a true survivor.
Conan the bacterium.
Yeah.
That's incredible. It really shows you that life is much tougher and more adaptable than we usually give it credit for.
That's what makes studying extremophiles so fascinating. They completely challenge our understanding of where life can exist, how it adapts, and what it means to be resilient. They've shown us that life is capable of so much more than we thought possible.
They've also made us realize that there could be life in places we never would thought to look, both here on Earth and out in the universe.
Absolutely. And the more we learn about extremophiles, the more likely we are to uncover even more amazing adaptations and incredible survival stories.
So what does this all mean for us? For how we understand life and our place in the universe?
It means we have to keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep pushing the boundaries of what we think we know. Extremophiles are living proof that life finds a way, that it adapts and thrives even when facing huge challenges.
They're a reminder that life is out there, waiting to be discovered in places we never thought possible. And who knows what we might learn from them? What kind of secrets or benefits might they hold?
It's a journey of discovery that's only just begun.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the incredible world of extremophiles. I hope you've enjoyed exploring with us.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive, keep asking questions, and remember those extremophiles out there, pushing the boundaries of life as we know it.
See you on our next deep dive.